other things.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you. The last quarter of the year, no lending, no real lending. In fact, if you look at what's even in the third quarter, you could see the banks were moving out of lending into investments. Then you could see that the financial sector itself, because of all the consolidation, shrunk by 13% in the third quarter.
The financial sector shrunk by 13% in the third quarter.
Yes, please.
Wow.
Yes, please. So you see, all of a sudden, you start to see that I'm actually waiting to see all the numbers for the last quarter of the year, because I expect that the numbers won't be
very good.
Won't be very good.
So let me come to Doc. So from a finance side, this looks quite grim last quarter. From the economic side, is that the same kind of thing you were seeing, or the economy usually reacts later? The finance starts and then the real economy follows. How does it work?
We're still talking about the
2018. 2018.
2018.
Yes.
Yeah, 2018 maybe as a whole. Well, of course, the financial sector and the real sector of the economy are sort of interlinked. Yeah, so whatever happens to one sector can affect but as he has said, the problems of the financial sector partly emanated from internal management challenges, weaknesses. So he's mentioned problems with credit management, corporate governance, and the high operational costs. So these were internal to the banking sector. But then outside the banking sector, we also have weak regulation. The regulatory framework has been weak. I mean, it's become clear that there was weak oversight. Of course, there's a background to this. The problem didn't just start in 2018. I mean, what has happened to the banking sector? We have also had a long incidence of macroeconomic instability in this country. High interest rates, high inflation, exchange rate instability. All these can also affect the balance sheets of banks. So the point I'm making is that it was due to a whole host of issues, problems coming together, affecting the banking sector. And then, of course, if the banking sector is also not doing well, it means that they are not going to be able to provide the fuel that's, to fuel the real sector, the oil that will fuel the real, in terms of, finance. So the real sector will also suffer as a result. Because, as he said, there was a liquidity, crunch. Credit to the private sector. It's been observed that credit to the private sector has actually, slowed down. And that will also hurt real economic activity.
So it's like symbiotic.
It's symbiotic.
The finance affects the real, the real affects the finance, and both of them are pulling each other down.
Exactly.
Wow.
So going forward, maybe we'll get there.
Yeah, so let me do it in a nice way.
Yes.
So third quarter, things start coming down. We get to December, Christmas is dry. Then 4th January, the governor of the Bank of Ghana makes an announcement. We have a short report on the announcement he made because we thought things had finished. But on 4th January, he made an announcement which led to a bigger consolidation. So let's just watch quickly what he did, and then we'll come and see what the implication of that is.
Reforms followed what the Bank of Ghana describes as a financial sector which has been in a considerable state of distress. Between 2017 and 2018, the central bank has revoked the licenses of 2 banks, that is UT Bank and Capital.
Okay, so there's a slight challenge with that. So what we do know is that the governor announced that following the asset quality test and the new minimum capital requirement, the number of banks had reduced from 32 to 23. He announced 3 mergers. There was Omnibank Sahel Sahara, then there was the merger between Energy Bank and then First Atlantic Bank. and then there was another merger. Then he said NIB and ADB were expecting money from a new trust, asset trust, which was going to come from our pensions. And then he mentioned that 2 banks had failed to meet the minimum capital requirement. So I think I have the video now, so let me just show you what he said, then we'll come and discuss it.
Followed what the Bank of Ghana describes as a financial sector which has been in a considerable state of distress. Between 2017 and 2018, the central bank has revoked the licenses of 2 banks, that is UT Bank and Capital Bank, and merged 5 others into the Consolidated Bank. These included Unibank, Royal Bank, Sovereign Bank, the Construction Bank, as well as Beige Bank. The Bank of Ghana's latest decision marks the completion of the reforms which included the need for banks to increase their capital levels from 120 million to 400 million cedis. The process, which commenced in August 2017, ended in December 2018. It has seen the number of banks whittled down from 34 to 23. Thus, 11 banks have been taken off the scene. Here is the governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Ernest Addison, announcing the central bank's work thus far.
Following the recapitalization exercise that has just ended at the end of December 2018, we now have 23 universal banks operating in Ghana. These banks have all met the new minimum paid-up capital of 400 million Ghana cedis. In particular, 16 banks have met the new minimum paid-up capital requirement of 400 million through the capitalization of income surplus and fresh capital injection. The Bank of Ghana has approved 3 applications for mergers. Consequently, the First Atlantic Merchant Bank Limited and Energy Commercial Bank have merged. Omni Bank and Bank Sahel Sahara have merged. And First National Bank and GHL Bank have merged. The 3 resulting banks out of these measures have all met the new minimum capital requirement.
Meanwhile, the licenses of 2 indigenous banks, Heritage Bank and Premium Bank, have been revoked.
Pursuant to Section 123 of the Banks and Specialized Deposit Taking Institutions Act 2016, that is Act 930, the Bank of Ghana has revoked the banking licenses of Premium Bank Limited and Heritage Bank Limited with effect from the date of this notice, and has appointed Mr. Vish Ashiagbo of PricewaterhouseCoopers as receiver for the 2 banks. Complete details of the basis on which the licenses of the 2 banks have been revoked will be attached to this press release. Among other things, Premium Bank was found to be insolvent as of 30th November 2018 with a capital adequacy ratio of negative 125.62%. Heritage Bank, among other things, obtained its banking license on 4th October 2016 on the basis of capital with questionable sources. Furthermore, the bank was unable to meet the new minimum capital requirement of 400 as of December 2018.
Dr. Addison further indicated of the central bank's decision to downgrade GN Bank to a savings and loans category for its inability to meet the 400 million cedis minimum capital level.
Ladies and gentlemen, GN Bank was unable to comply with the minimum capital directive by 31st December 2018. Consequently, the bank has applied for and Bank of Ghana has approved the grant of a savings and loans company license. The bank has also approved a transition plan submitted by GN for winding down aspects of its business which are not compatible with the savings and loans company license. The Bank of Ghana will closely monitor implementation of the approved transitional plan, which is expected to be completed by the end of June 2019.
Again, 5 banks are to benefit from the government's 2 billion cedis financial support to enable them meet the minimum capital requirement. These include UMB, ADB, Prudential Bank, NIB, as well as Omni Bank and Sahel Sahara Bank.
So that was Pius Emihire Duku's report. That report was filed on the 4th of January when the governor, who didn't seem very happy, he didn't seem very excited at all, announcing the reforms from 34 to 23 banks. So now don't forget, Joe Jackson said to us that January to August, things were going this way. Then they announced the 5 banks consolidating, things came that way. Now we are in January. 3 days ago, they did an announcement. Are we going to go down? Are we going to go back up? He will tell us when we come back. Don't go away.
Hello and good evening. You're welcome once again to another exciting edition of Sister. My name is Jessica.
Every Thursday night on Citi TV, you're welcome to join women from different backgrounds and opinions as they weigh in on your relationship issues. Watch Sister as the ladies get real with issues about love, marriage, betrayal, sex, dating, trust, finances, and more.
Look, I'm telling you, sometimes see, you let your guard down. That's what I'm saying. That look, most of the time, my main problem is that when you unpack, don't go to the first gear. Once you hit the first gear, you are likely to go to second, third, fourth, fifth. You understand? So just don't attempt it. So once you attempt it, maybe the first day, because you're careful and and sometimes we mistaken when you meet an intellectual lady, you know, a very well-spoken lady, a very sharp, beautiful lady, you think that they are pure. They can't possibly have any impurities or anything with them.
Join Jessica and her sisters for Citi TV's all-women talk show, Sister, every Thursday at 9 p.m. Sister is sponsored by Fritol.
Spend 30 minutes every weekday catching up with all the trending social media conversations of the day. If you tweet it, we'll read it. We might just even Skype you. 30 minutes is all it takes, so use the hashtag 30minutes on social media to catch our attention. Join the most interactive social media TV show weekdays at 5 p.m. only on Citi TV.
Welcome back to The Point of View. Tonight we're trying to look into the crystal ball. What kind of year will 2019 be for the economy? We started by talking about the banking sector. My guest, Joe Jackson, who's the Director of Business, Dalex, and then Dr. John Kwachi, a private economic consultant. So I'm coming back to Joe, right? So you said the announcement in August brought things down for your business. Well, January had another announcement, and there's more consolidation. 2 more banks are joining. What does that mean for your business?
I think that in general, this was not as dramatic as the announcement of the first consolidation.
Okay.
And so you're not going to find as much of a reaction, right? That was dramatic. I mean, the size of Unibank alone tells you about what happened. But guess what? I don't think these issues have ended. They've not been completed. There's a big fudge, which is the Ghana Amalgamated Trust. 2 warning signs. First of all, the central bank says, I don't know, go and ask Ministry of Finance. That's not a good sign. That's not a good sign at all. Because in the first statement, they issued a disclaimer. And they followed the disclaimer with a very firm statement that GATT is essentially what they're saying is a political creation. Now, I predict, and be careful, I hope you're not making us prophesy. Prophecy has a very bad name these days.
Prophesy with your eyes open.
And no translations. I predict that 2 billion that GATT is supposed to raise is going to be very challenging. And I say that very carefully. Think about it. NTN, without any toxic connotations, found it difficult to raise 2 billion in this country. The majority of the 2 billion it raised was actually from outside, not internal. So we're going to have one of two things. If you're raising 2 billion here, we are crowding out all other things that are going to happen in this side of town. I even have serious doubts whether there'll be that much uptake. For the very simple reason, if you create an asset with 2 billion and you're looking at hurdle rates of about 20%.
Wow.
These banks that have been, how much profit did they declare? How much profit have they declared? How are these institutions going to meet the interest payments?
So you don't think we'll raise the 2 billion? This GATT thing will not work. That's what you're saying.
It is very
So
challenging.
it looks like ADB, NIB, who are depending on this GATT.
Prudential, UMB. I have a feeling we will be sitting here in 2-3 months revisiting this issue.
So this doesn't bring finality. The announcement that we have 23 banks, because the Bank of Ghana was the one who raised the minimum capital requirement.
Yes.
This is so. How long is this uncertainty going to linger?
I think it's going to linger for a minimum of another 3 months, and it could go on for longer. Reason being that also remember that if these institutions they were talking about require that much support and are not making that much money, some of them haven't even published their results. Who has done the due diligence? Some of them haven't even published results for the last 2 years. So we are making huge leaps of leaping of faith. Now, at the same time, so we have to ask ourselves that, hey, please, who's going to take this thing? And if we don't change management and boards, the governorship of these institutions, are we not just going to run into the same mess again? So there are questions to be asked.
Economist, what are we in a financial crisis? Are we in a recession? What is the scientific name of what we are going through?
Well, before I even go there, let me also give my take on
what you said.
The banking. Crisis. Of course, Joe has mentioned some specific, problems with, including consolidating and they are not consolidated. They are being separated. NIB and ADB.
No, they are not being consolidated.
No, okay.
There's an injection of capital to a special purpose vehicle.
So that's a specific issue. And he could be right, But I'll take a very general view of what is good. We were certainly in a deep crisis, but I believe that the situation has been, reasonably managed. Yes, that's by the central bank, government, and everything. Because if it were in other systems, there would have been more, turbulence.
Okay.
In fact, the fact that government even stepped in to bail out, customers and all that calmed, nerves and all. So I believe that the West is behind us.
The West is behind us.
In the banking crisis.
The best is yet to come.
Exactly. I'm more optimistic because now we have a better capitalized system. And more consolidated. It was said that given the size of our economy, we had too many banks.
Yeah.
Okay, so the natural thing is to consolidate, and that's where we are going from 34 to I think 23. Of course, we are expecting, as I said, the real sector of this economy also to improve, and that will help the financial sector. But of course, as he has said, there are challenges that still need to be addressed. In other words, how the problem arose in the first instance, those weaknesses need to be addressed. He has talked about management issues, corporate, governance, supervision, and then, there's what is called safety nets, safety nets in the banking sector.
Okay.
This has to do with credit reference bureau, even deposit insurance, scheme, identification of customers and all that. These safety nets, I'm sure, are also being sort of strengthened.
All right.
Yeah. So I am more, optimistic. But it does not.
So the West is past.
That's how I see it.
Okay.
Because we have been here before. In the late 80s, we also had a financial sector crisis, and the whole sector was restructured and reformed and so on. I think this is the second phase of it, and I believe that we will continue.
So what, are we in a recession? What are we in? What are we in
presently?
Yes.
No. Recession, in economic terms, when you say recession, it means that for 2 successive quarters, the economic growth the economy itself has declined, not the rate of growth.
The economy has shrunk.
Has shrunk.
Okay.
2 successive quarters.
Okay.
That is the technical definition. We haven't experienced that in this country. If anything, we've been growing.
The economy is even expanding.
It's expanding.
In spite of all the challenges.
It's growing, but even at a reduced rate, maybe in the non-oil sector. But when you put the entire economy with oil, it's been expanding. In spite of the fact that for the last 2 years, the government has had to consolidate because of where we came from. Under the IMF program, when you are consolidating and you are not spending that much, especially on infrastructure and so on, you do not expect to achieve a very high rate of growth. But again, when we talk about going forward into 2019, I can see that the government is beginning to loosen up a little bit, because if you look at the deficit, in other words, they're trying to loosen up a little bit so that they can spend more to boost economic activity.
So very interesting point of difference between the two of you.
Yeah.
One is saying there's a bit of turbulence ahead.
Yes.
But you're saying the West is behind.
Well, in respect of the banking sector he was talking about.
Yes.
Not the economy as a whole. He was talking about the banking sector.
But the banking sector is the analogy we are using for the economy, because it's in finance. So but I don't know how. For example, globally, when the financial system comes down, the economy goes with it.
Yes.
Should not be the same for the economy, or we are not as highly efficient in Ghana as they are in
the
that.
Ghanaian economy, and the banking sector and the financial sector. I mean, the size of it and the contribution to the economy is not the same as when you talk about the US, where the financial crisis can bring the whole economy down. Because the financial sector in this country is much smaller.
So it's not as influential over the overall economy.
Exactly.
A lot of people, economic actors, are not part of the financial system.
So the financial sector can do badly. The entire economy may not do so badly in this country.
You agree with that?
Well,
okay, not fully, and I'll explain why. To be frank, this economy has grown.
Okay.
In spite of all you may say, we were actually, if you see the World Bank reports, we're still one of the economies that's growing pretty well.
Yeah.
The challenge I have, and it's fundamental to the argument I'm making, is this. You see growth at the top. Why? Because we're exporting oil, and we're exporting cocoa, and gold is still being shipped out. So the extractive industries are working. But here's the thing. There's a role the financial sector plays, which is moving that wealth that is being created from areas of surplus to areas of scarcity. That's the whole point of the intermediation role of the financial sector. So when that is broken in any form, or the trust is not there, and people are, first of all, there's a reluctance to put your surplus funds into the financial sector. There is a mistrust of financial institutions. That mediation role is broken. So there's no transmission mechanism. So it could account, for example, for the fact that there seems to be, at the macroeconomic level, growth, etc. But on the ground, things still seem tough. Because that mechanism that spreads the, he used a very important word, that greases earlier on. That greases and moves the wealth around. That mechanism is challenged. And so, you find that there is growth, and it's nice to say inflation is down, and the economy, GDP has grown, etc. But agro, any form.
Let me read a few comments for you, and then let's move to the next level of 2019. What do we expect? When is the 2 billion coming? Should government spend? Should they still be careful of overspending and deficit and stuff? So here are some comments. Dominic Osei Ajay in Kasua says, why are the local banks alone folding up, but the foreign banks are not? I don't understand. Ben from Boga, good evening to you and your panelists. I want to find out from them the position of government and BOG on the fate of customers and depositors of First Allied Savings and Loans, who also had savings and investments locked up. They've had this locked up since June, up to date. Good evening, Bernard. I want you to ask your panelists what they envisage for infrastructure development in Ghana for 2019 and beyond, looking at the slowdown in the Chinese economy and the trade war between Trump and Xi Jinping, bearing in mind that a chunk of the financing of these development projects are coming from China. This is Ni watching in Osu. Foley from Spring, Texas. Bernard, I like your show. It's very educative. There are more comments that I'm going to read. Glover Mafo in Asmankese. I'm grateful to SEC for their timely intervention. I nearly deposited my life savings with NAM1. We must allow our institutions to work and avoid over-politicization of every issue in this country. Politics has crippled all institutions, affecting their output and effectiveness. Efo Elikem Kwame says, we have to go back to the olden days where our grandparents used to save money in holes. He's not bringing his money to daylight. He doesn't want that. Derico Sadogrino Bernardino. Here we are in a discombobulated state.
Wow.
BOG told us GATT will use private pension funds to recapitalize the other 5 banks, including state banks, ADB and NIB. I'm really lost. Is this feasible? So these are comments. So just a final quick one on the banking before we go to economy. So we've mentioned the banks, there's consolidation. But there are a lot of, there was Gold Coast Securities, McOatley's, Ideal. A lot of these guys are also in some sort of trouble. Then there's NAM1 and Men's Gold. Are they related, or we should treat them as separate things? Is NAM1 and Men's Gold a different matter? Or is it related to what's happening in the banking sector?
Insofar as the Men's Gold issue is still related to people and how they manage their money. Unfortunately, even though it is a completely separate matter, it still impacts on the crisis. It still makes the fear and panic worse. Even though it is a completely separate matter.
Completely separate.
Completely. It has nothing, truly, anybody who goes to the Bank of Ghana or anybody to ask questions, I'm like, you can't have your...
For example, people are saying there's no liquidity. And the assumption is that the lack of liquidity could be because people are going to lock their money in Men's Gold.
It is part of it.
Of course.
So that is true.
Yes, it is part of it. It's Men's Gold, it's a consolidated bank 5-year bond. So all those are parts of the issue.
Just a quick take on that.
I mean, the liquidity crunch.
Yeah.
I have it right here. The banking sector crisis has caused some liquidity crunch. Men's Gold. If you hear the amounts that people have, put in Men's Gold, you can understand why we say there's not enough liquidity in this economy. When I hear some of the amounts, I ask myself, so do Ghanaians really have all these monies? Then there's something called Bitcoin that people have, also invested and lost a lot of money. So all these, and of course, together with the fiscal consolidation, all put together, certainly will show up as liquidity crunch. And that's why people argue that, they say that they don't have enough money.
So it's true, these are causes. Good. So when we come back, we're going to ask ourselves, how is the government going to make us happy? Because election is in the corner. And 2020, when people don't have money, they vote by heart. So we are going to find out for our guest what the government's options are. Don't forget, we just finished an IMF program. Fiscal consolidation, which is one of Dr. Kwasi's favorite expressions, is fully in the offing. But people are waiting in the leeway for Akufo-Addo. If he doesn't spend, he's in trouble. How is he going to manage that? Stay tuned.
Analysis of the most exciting football league in the world. Don't miss the stats, the news, and the debate. Get expert opinions on who makes the Fantasy League Premier League team of the week. It's the Premier League Preview Show.
Ask any defender or any supporter out there whether they were afraid of losing. They'll tell you no, because he wasn't as good as he was 3 years later. So that's saying that in 3 years' time, we'll be having this conversation about Mohamed Salah.
The Premier League Preview Show every Friday at 3 p.m. only on Citi TV.
Welcome back. A few interesting comments. Samuel says, Bernard, please include CDH. My cash is locked up there. One day I'll do a program on the companies people have appealed to me to do programs on. There are over 10. And I'm talking about banks. People say they can't get access to their monies. So we are in January. What's going to happen? Because the government seems to want to say that they have managed the macroeconomy well. But people will start agitating that they want roads, they want schools, they want things. So what's going to happen?
Yeah, you know, the government has a 4-year mandate. They've done 2 years, and people are already, you know, rushing to sort of judge them, that conclude that, you know, you haven't even succeeded. But I don't think 2 years is long enough, in the sense that given the kind of economy that they inherited, naturally you have to consolidate. And that's what they've been doing. And if you look at all the major economic indicators, they've been able to point them in the right directions. In fact, even economic growth, inflation, the deficit, public debt.
So everything is moving in the right direction?
Everything is pointing in the right direction.
Growth is better.
Yes.
Inflation is lower.
Yes. Growth. These are on rebased GDP terms. 2016, and I'm talking aggregate, not aggregate, including oil. So 3.4% 2016, 8.1% 2017, 5.6% 2018, because the oil sort of includes oil. This was pushed up by oil 2017, and then it stabilized.
What are you predicting for 2019?
It's 7.6.
So growth is fine.
It's fine.
Inflation.
If you talk about inflation, 2016 was 15.4, 11.7 for 2017. Projecting 8.9.
So it's coming further down.
And then project 8 for 20.
So inflation is going in the right direction.
Yeah, the deficit 6.5% 2016, 4.8 2017. 3.7 2018,
coming down.
Yes, but then 2019 4.2. That is where I'm saying that they want to loosen.
So they'll start spending more in 2019. They'll start spending more.
Certainly.
What about debt? Because we borrowed a lot to fill the hole the banks created.
Yes.
So don't tell me that the debt is going to come down.
In what terms? In GDP terms.
But the GDP has been rebased.
Yes.
So that's not fair.
Yeah. No, it's fair. You see, the thing is that you get the benefits of a higher GDP in terms of maybe your debt ratios will come down and so on. You get me? But at the same time, your revenue to GDP is also going to come down.
So actually, people say a more sensible thing to do is not debt to GDP, but debt to revenue and debt to exports.
Exactly. Because that gives you the sense of the immediate burden
of the debt. So when you use that, is the debt looking as good?
Servicing burden. The servicing.
Yes, because your servicing ability is based on your liquidity.
It's high.
So the debt is not coming down.
the servicing burden is still high, but it will come down in the.
So when you
future.
put all this together,
yeah,
what is your prediction for 2019
in terms of the
whether we'll feel better? I don't know. Yes. I just want to know whether I'll be happy. I can pay my workers. I will go on holiday, buy a new car. And
what I'm trying to say is that in the first 2 years, the government has had to consolidate the economy. They have no choice because of the economy that they inherited. You know, I mean, there was so much instability reflected in everything. So you have to consult
economics
under the program, under the IMF program. You have to consult. It means that you cannot spend, you know, so much, and you have to rationalize your expenditure. Okay. You can go into an expenditure and say, oh, maybe you should have spent more on this and that. That one we can do that. Yeah. But going forward, now they will create more room to spend, especially on the infrastructure that has lagged. You know, so if you look at the 2019 budget, there's going to be more spending on infrastructure, but they are still trying to keep within, you know, a deficit that also will ensure long-term sustainability and stability.
But that's always an impossible thing.
No, it's a balancing act that you have to do, and that is why they are also putting in place structures and systems, you know, like the fiscal responsibility law. You know, fiscal rules, fiscal council, you know, those systems will impose the discipline.
So they are going to force themselves to be disciplined.
Exactly. If only they
but when the president travels around the country and people say we want roads, we want more money. Like men's go customers say the president should pay the money that they lost. So there's a lot of demand. Are you saying that those fiscal things can with restrain his hand? Or the finance minister's hand?
Yes, but as I said, they are planning to loosen up a little bit to spend more on infrastructure, which will boost economic growth, which will also put more money in the pockets of people. Because
but what's the same infrastructure that NDC was saying they were doing, and they said that infrastructure is not anything. I don't even understand, because I remember at the NDC they were building all kinds of infrastructure, and people said that infrastructure locks up the money, so they should rather spend the money on other things.
But don't you hear people criticizing this government for not building anything?
Yes.
They said they have not built anything.
Spending on free SHS.
Exactly. So the sensible thing to do is to start
spending on infrastructure,
showing, you know,
tangible things.
Yeah, the tangible things.
So Joe, where's the money going to come from?
Listen, let me tell you something. If you want to be happy in your pocket, Ben, tonight, when you are going to bed, go down on your knees and pray to God that the Chinese have mercy on you.
Oh,
I'm serious. There's no other action in town. Definitely not from the UK suffering from
Brexit phobia.
Definitely not from the US, where this 2019, there's a real risk of a financial crash
because of all the shutdown,
because of the trade war, because of the impulsiveness of Trump, and the extreme volatility.
So no money from UK, no money from. What about Europe?
Oh please, they're struggling. Listen,
so all the money is going to come from China.
The action is in China. Hey. If you have a Chinese man, make him your friend. Truly, if the Chinese economic slows down to the point where they have to rethink some of the commitments they've made, we are in deep trouble. Then you are not going to be happy. Listen, there's been a lot of belt tightening. And as for the desire to spend more, the desire might be there, but I tell you, the flexibility is minimal. Between the act we passed that says that we must spend within our income, cut our coats to our cloth or whatever, and the fact that, listen, still, you know, in all the statistics Prof quoted, there was one key one, which is that the cost of servicing our debt is actually one of the few things that went in the negative direction. And we still want to borrow and issue more bonds. Charlie, Ben, China,
So with beyond China, you don't see, but the Chinese don't also give you money physically. We've learned from the various loans that they bring there.
Is worth.
Yeah.
If the Chinese come to spend money here, even for the Chinese who are proverbial in managing to bring in their own labor, etc., some money will have to be spent in the economy.
Really?
Yes. So there would definitely be an easing up and some of the you see, because right now we're in a horrendous.
But the government is raising its seriousness with GRA. They are tightening up at the ports. Yeah. They are doing tax education. They are saying we should register for tin. Is that not going to raise the money they need?
You know, one of the biggest fightbacks against the government has been at the port, where the leakages were massive, and where to be honest with you, the government has done some pretty fantastic things. The port is one of them. The other massive leakage where all the millions of cedis were losing in revenue because people will bring in oil products supposedly to be exported to Niger, Mali, and Burkina, and promptly turn around and sell them here, swerving all the petroleum taxes. That was a massive gig in the.
So they've blocked some of these loopholes.
They've blocked some of these loopholes, but I'm telling you, they're still not meeting their revenue targets, and that's another thing that's going in the.
Is it because people are not paying tax or people don't have money?
They do.
Or they don't know where they pull out.
You can't say in one breath that there's a liquidity crunch. There's no financing, and that is causing a slowdown in demand, and then say that at the same time you're going to push people to pay more. Remember that some of the things that we should have done to make life easier haven't still happened. National ID was supposed to come in and help us beat that registration identification bump so that it should be able to make it easier for institutions to lend. Well, we've made some progress, but it's very slow, epileptic. I don't know. National ID is a major issue. Right now, some of the things we put in place, there's one step forward, 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Digital address system.
Digital address system, we are not sure. Even at the port, there's so much pushback that not all the things that they wanted to do have been done.
Wow.
So,
from what if I'm hearing you, they will struggle because China's growth has slowed. You haven't even answered the question the person sent about trade wars.
It was Ni in Osu.
He said there's a trade war.
Ni in Osu said there's a trade war. The economy of China has slowed. That's why we have to pray.
But the Chinese don't believe in prayer.
That's a little challenge.
So we are praying for them to be kind. What about the Middle East? What about Saudi Arabia? What about
Qatar?
Is there no money coming from there?
Ben, I think that it's true that we are planning to get some substantial financing from the Chinese.
Yeah.
One is in terms of barter, the barter agreement. I mean, bauxite infrastructure exchange. And I think they're also talking about long-term, bonds and
the
so on.
The 100-year bond.
Yeah, but even that aside, that's a longer term. The Chinese, the Sino Hydro facility, I think it's just 2 billion. It's 2 billion.
Yes.
I'm calling it just
2 billion.
Yeah, because the Chinese, we're talking about them being in difficulty, but they can accommodate 2 billion.
Is small.
2 billion is not.
But what 2 billion do to our economy?
A lot. But I must say that internally, it doesn't mean that we are also forgetting about mobilizing our own domestic resources. Because in the long term, the president is talking about Ghana beyond aid. And that's so we are not, even if you use the new rebased GDP, our revenue, I think our tax to GDP ratio has fallen to something about 13%. That is very, very low. It means that as a country, we are not raising enough internal revenue. And he's talking about all the problems, broadening the tax net, the evasion, the exemptions, the fraud, the corruption. It is estimated that the amount of money that we lose through these illicit financial flows, misinvoicing, trade misinvoicing, and so on, if we were to plug all those loopholes, I mean, we will increase our revenue intake by a very substantial amount. So internally, there's a lot that we can do. That's not that.
But people may get tired of taxation. Don't forget when the government came in, they even said they were going to remove nuisance taxes.
Yes.
So in the first year, they sort of hamstrung themselves by removing certain taxes that were brought in.
Yes, certain.
And now they want to tighten the port, and they are getting pushed back.
Yes.
And your domestic capital formation is also very weak.
Yes.
So you say now you are Ghana beyond aid.
Yeah, we are not there yet. No, I mean, that's the ultimate. It's a goal. It's a vision. It's a goal. But what I'm saying is that I'm not asking for Ghanaians to be taxed
more.
No.
What are you saying?
I'm saying that those who are not in the tax net
will be brought.
Yes, the informal sector. That's why this digitization.
But do they have money? These people who are not in the tax net.
The informal sector is roughly about 30% of the GDP. 30%. So you say 30%.
Yeah.
The income there
is 30%.
Is 30%. So you can say that if they are outside the tax net, we are losing, that much. And then, as I said, those who escape the evasion, the exemptions. The government itself has admitted that
exemptions are too many,
too high. We should, curtail the exemptions, and then the illicit fraud, corruption.
Let me ask, what's going to happen with Nigeria's election? How will that affect us? Because I'm told that it's going to be very close and it could lead to some instability.
Well, the truth of the matter is that if things go bad, you should expect an increased flow of people into this country.
Oh, from Nigeria?
From Nigeria, and that's a fact of life.
Wow.
We've got to deal with it. But let me point out something. It is very important for us to realize that when we say those who are not in the tax net, it's not just it's not the watches seller down the road. Though. That's why you may think that it's the lawyers who don't pay tax.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, really?
It's the Gollywood guys who don't pay tax. The accountants who don't pay tax. The car hire firms who don't pay proper tax. It's not. You see, right now, a very, very tiny percentage. Those who are under, for example, if you're a financial institution, you dare not swerve 1 cedi of tax, right? If you work for the government, you pay every cedi you owe on tax with WHT, etc. Those who are not really informal, but act as if they are in the informal market, and don't bother at all to do any to make tax payments. That's where the meat is. It is in the middle.
The missing middle.
The missing middle, not at the bottom.
I'll bring you back in 3 months to see whether our predictions have come to pass. Joe Jackson, who's the head of business, director of business at Dalex Finance, and Dr. John Kwachi, who is a private economic consultant. Thank you for making it a great show. My name is Bernard Avle. Thank you for watching tonight's edition. There'll be a replay on Thursday at 2 p.m. Stay with Citi TV. Good night.